Okay, straight into business this morning then. And we'll look towards the oil sector and what is being referred to in some areas as, well, first of all, it is a matter of reversals. Reversals in the NCDMB, which is the, it's a section of the oil sector. And Senator Heineken Lokpobiri is the Minister of State, and he's found himself at cross purposes, shall we say, with the executive secretary of the place, the Nigerian Content Development Board, Felix Ogbe. There's been much that's been said about it. The long and short of it is that the executive secretary decided, for purposes of efficiency and as the top dog in that parastatal, had gone about his business and made some postings, some rearrangements. But then a letter came directly from the Minister of State in that ministry. The president is the minister. And, it's caused something of an uproar. There are those who are saying that the minister overstepped his bounds. There are those who are saying not necessarily so, if you know all the details. That's why we have this morning Mr. Jeremiah Owokpele. He's a legal practitioner, and he will, help us look into the matter. So a fine morning to you, Mr. Owokpele.
Good morning, sir. It's good to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on the program, and we hope we'll be able to see a bit more clearly into this. Let me start from perhaps the most obvious aspect of it, which is that the executive secretary is the top dog, so to speak, isn't he? And the minister has many responsibilities in the oil sector. So why did he take the special interest, to actually write in a letter reversing what the executive secretary had set in motion? Yes, there is a board and all of that, but I'll leave you to explain all of that. Maybe you could just clear that bit out, that it's not very usual, is it, for ministers to get directly involved in the day-to-day runnings of parastatals under them?
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be on set to give very clear clarifications on the seeming imbroglio between the executive secretary and the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, who incidentally in this situation is the chairman of the governing council that oversees the many other parastatals, including the Local Content Development Board. I have keenly listened to the arguments profiled, with particular reference to the one that was anchored on this very station, and the impressions are a little bit very quietly unethical in my view. Now, I've heard people say that yes, very unethical. It's not good, and I'm saying this because I have here with me, and of course I've read the act that created the Local Content Development Board. Now, yes, if you take a very clear look at the act, you realize that beyond the fact that the executive secretary does the day-to-day running of the board, there are certain clauses or sections in this law that gives ample powers to the Honorable Minister of State in his position of steed as the chairman of the governing council. And I'd like to just make a few readings from the law so that we can be very clear as to the position or the legitimacy with which the Honorable Minister of Petroleum acted. Now, if you look at Section 75A, it says the council shall have powers to manage and superintend the affairs of the board, make rules and regulations for the proper functioning of the board. Now, I've just read you a direct representation of what is in the law. And having said that, let me also take the opportunity to read the minister's correspondence to the executive secretary. And maybe there's also need for me at this point to shed a little background on why all this is happening. And the letter which I have here, which was signed by the Honorable Minister of State in his position as chairman of the governing council. Let me read the first two paragraphs. It said,
of which the executive secretary, sorry sir, of which the executive secretary is also a member.
Yes, he's the secretary of the council.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, this is the letter he wrote. Reference personnel announcement. The personnel announcement signed by the executive secretary NCDMB dated 4th March 2004 with reference number NCDMB ES/1/001/03/24 redeploying some management staff of the board refers. It has become imperative to emphatically state that the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Act 2010 does not empower the Executive Secretary to redeploy or appoint management staff. Section 81(2)(b) of the Act states that the Executive Secretary is responsible to the Council, and this is a direct representation of the Act, of the Council for the execution of the policies and the administration of the daily affairs of the board. The ES, therefore, does not have the power to redeploy, appoint, or employ management staff. Accordingly, the Executive Secretary does not have the authority to overturn deployments or redeployments made by the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources and the Chairman of the Governing Council of the Board. 3. Furthermore, Section 101 of the Act states that the Minister shall make regulations generally for the purpose of carrying out or giving effect to the provisions of the Act. The Executive Secretary is strongly advised not to usurp the powers of the Governing Council on any subject matter. In the light of the above, the redeployments announced by the Executive Secretary to all staff on the 4th of March 2024 is hereby overturned. Consequently, all affected staff should remain in their place of assignment as status quo remains. Please be guided. Signed, the Honorable Minister. Now, the question to ask at this point is, what is wrong in this correspondence that was sent to the Executive Secretary?
Okay,
the framers of the law.
Before you go, sir, thank you very much for reading that selection out. You see, the Nigerian Content Development Board, the Executive Secretary is the chief executive, is he not, of that particular?
There's no dispute, but I've just also read to you where it is clearly stated in Section 75, the Council, which is the Minister himself sharing the Council and other members, shall have powers to A, manage and superintend the affairs of the board. What are the affairs of the board? In the later, he also copiously quoted another section that empowers him to do what he's doing.
Okay.
It is the view of the framers of the law. Just a minute. It is the view of the framers of this act that there could be a situation like this, that an Executive Secretary could either act ultra-vires or outside his powers. And therefore, there's need to make clear regulations as to what he can do and what he cannot do. Now, if the Executive Secretary, in his wisdom, had written sought consent of the governing board before he takes these decisions, I'm sure there will be no end of this crisis. What the minister simply did was to carry out his function as chairman of the governing council to say, sir, can you just stop a bit, revert back to the council, let us look at it, let us deliberate, and let us give you the necessary approval that you need for you to carry out this assignment. What is wrong in this act?
Okay, I thank you very much. I hear you, but there are a lot of people, perhaps you speaking as a lawyer and also an insider, in the course of the time we have, you probably explain it a bit more, but I made reference to the fact, and you said, yes, it is so, that he's the chief executive. He knows the place even better than the minister. The minister doesn't have to be an expert in his field. That's not what ministers do. The ministers have the power to superintend and all of that. So I'm wondering, and perhaps you can clarify for us, what is the interest of the minister to reverse an order of the executive secretary? I've heard what you've explained, but what would be, because the minister wouldn't do that if he didn't think that anything was affected. What is the interest of the minister? Is the curious, if you want, the simplistic kind of question that somebody might ask?
The interest of the minister, I think it's very obvious from the couching of the letter. It will interest you to know that immediately the executive secretary made these deployments, there were uproars within the office in Yanagwa. I'm sure you must have heard this from other sources. Now, not only that, are you also aware that arising from this development that caught between the minister and the executive secretary, the local Pengerson Union attempted to shut down the entire operations of the office. Their reason is that this is affecting them on one side, and on the fact that the action of the executive secretary, beyond the fact that it contravenes extant provisions of the Local Content Act, goes against civil service regulations. The people that were appointed to make head of different decks or directorates, they are people who are their far senior. And so there was rumblings. So the question is, should the Honorable Minister, in his position and wisdom as chairman of the Governing Council, shut his eyes from a situation that will affect the implementation or the achieving of the very noble objectives of this local content board? This is the question reasonable Nigerians should be asking. What if, in the course of his silence in relegating or declining to carry out his function, there is a serious industrial crisis in the local content board? In any case, let us even assume that that does not happen. What is the place of seniority in governance? I thought that this is a very explicit position within the civil service where seniority is given its impetus or its place. So the idea of picking people who are not senior to you to come and take over functions as head, in my view, could spell a lot of doom for the office. And so the minister acted justly, he acted timely.
Okay, so maybe there's a clue in what you've just said. It was the concern, let me not say fear, it was the concern of the Honorable Minister, as you seem to have indicated, that the postings, redeployments, whatever that the Executive Secretary had done would actually compromise its efficiency and effectiveness and smooth running. That seems to be what I'm getting from you. And what I just, don't seem to understand there is that why a man of such experience would go ahead and sabotage an operation on over which he superintends. I take entirely what you've explained, that, look, if it comes to power, depending on how you interpret it, if it comes to where does the power lie, the final word, yeah, it's clear. It's clear. The minister, perhaps. But I did make the point that it's not usual for ministers to go into the day-to-day running of these people.
Yes.
And then reversing what has been done.
Can I say something again?
Yes,
I'd like to read for you again another section. This is section 100 in the law. It says the minister may issue to the board directives in relation to the Nigerian content development with respect to the application, administration, and implementation of this act. Again, this is another clause or another section that gives a lot of powers to the minister. Now, you have asked this question. It's a little bit out of the norm to see a minister intervening directly in the day-to-day affair. It is so, one, like I pointed out clearly, is because the act itself gives him that power to do so. Okay? That's the very essence why the governing council in the very first place was constituted. It is a bit not normal because perhaps, and I'm not saying this to disrespect any other minister, perhaps some have just allowed them to run things without necessarily taking a scrutiny at their books, the regulations, and what are the steps they could take and the powers they do not have. And so, when a minister does this, to some people this is strange. It's not strange. The law itself was created for situations like this. And so what it did is to meet the very expectations of the law, to say that every time, at every point, the governing council must be involved in the management and in the affairs of this board to ensure that the target objective is met and not to allow any actions that may compromise the overall objective. And that is exactly what the minister has done. In my view, there is nothing strange. If the governing council was not important in those who came up with the idea of creating the local content board and putting regulations that will ensure its smooth operation, I'm sure there would have been no need for a governing council. And let me also say this. If you take a comparative study of other agencies and the laws that regulate them, you'll realize that that of the local content is quite distinct. It's very distinct, perhaps, in my view, from a legal standpoint, because of the very objective in trying to develop our local content. They have gone a little bit, put some far-reaching powers on the governing council. For example, it will interest you to note that the local content cannot spend certain amount of money without them. It's stated clearly in the law. You must get approvals. Now, in terms of both remuneration, in terms of both employment, promotion, the law is very clearly stated here that you must revert back to the governing council. And so one begins to wonder at this point, why didn't the executive secretary, who has been in the oil industry for quite some time, and I respect him with a beautiful CV and experiences, what he needed to do was to look at the laws. If the law says that for you to make these deployments, you must revert back and get the express approval of the board, it's not so big to do. You are
All
also
right.
the secretary of this same governing council. Sorry, the council. He's the secretary of the council. So what he needs to do is to follow the procedure that has been entrenched before his appointment and do the same thing and get the express approval. So I say to you, if he had taken that route, I'm sure there would have been no need for all these ulabalus about what is happening, what's the minister doing. Again, like I've always submitted, and I will re-emphasize it, the minister acted wisely. He acted within the confines of his power as clearly written and given to him under the Act. So there's nothing very strange. What is strange is that this minister has gone very proactive to ensure that he carries out his duties very effectively and efficiently.
Okay, one moment. Let me bring on our first caller this morning. Good morning, Mr. George. Go ahead, please.
Uncle Yori, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Uncle Yori, I'm taken aback by some of the arguments I'm hearing from your guests. The civil service in Nigeria is guided by one rule. The rule is applicable to all the parastatals of government. The minister is supervising the ministry that has parastatals. Each parastatal has its chief executive. Administrative management of each parastatal rests with the executive secretary, in this case of the board, or the head of that parastatal. There is nowhere that I know where a minister is the one to decide who should be posted to one department or who should be removed from one department to the other, when there is a chief executive of that parastatal. If the law or the act setting up that content board made the minister to have such powers, then that law has goofed and must be re-amended.
All right.
What I am hearing from the lawyer is very strange. He says the board is chaired by the minister, the content board is chaired by the minister, and that the minister has a right to overrule whatever the executive secretary has done. When the executive secretary posted some people, did the content board meet where the minister as chairman took a decision that whatever that thing that the executive secretary did is wrong and should be reversed? Did the board meet to take that decision? Obviously not.
Okay, Mr. George, I think
just,
your point has been made, and I'd want Mr. Lokpobiri to react to it if he wishes.
I think the guests on the other side may be misunderstanding the facts. As rightly stated from the very beginning of this session, I did say there is no dispute as to the position of the executive secretary as the head and runs the daily affairs of the board. But I did also mention that in line with the practice directive as contained clearly, or the regulations in the Act, the minister, in his position as chairman of the council, has powers to do so. Now, what I expect him to ask, in the past, hasn't the local content referred issues to the board, to the governing council, and got approvals for them to take decision? The answer is emphatically yes. This is not the first governing council. We had a governing council with Silva, a former governor of Bayelsa State, as chairman of the council. What the law simply envisage and state is very clear and is unambiguous. When you are taking certain actions where the statute is clearly written, you must revert to the governing council. What is wrong in that law? I have also stated here, just like he agreed, that there are a lot of powers given to the governing council. So if there are issues with the law, the proper thing is to go and make the amendment. But what is undisputed is that the minister did not act outside his powers. He did exactly it's in the law.
That is what some people are. That is
he asked the man to reverse and follow the due process. There is nothing wrong in asking the executive secretary to follow due process.
Okay. Now, as that contributor, that viewer said, there will be a number of parastatals agencies under a given ministry, and in this case, even the minister that we're speaking about now. Is it going to take the time to be x-raying every last day-to-day operation within all of those boards? Many people feel that clearly not. He doesn't have time. He has bigger fish to fry, is the thinking. So what is it about this particular ministry that is coming in this way that a lot of people, just like the one who just finished speaking, say that this is strange to him? And as you yourself know, it's become a raging debate. But you have explained to us that the minister is just seeking to keep to the letter and the spirit of the law. That's what you are saying. But he can't do that as effectively and efficiently in all of the boards under him, is what I would suggest for your consideration.
Yeah, but let me ask you, how many of these boards under his leadership as chairman of governing council are having such internal issues? Like we have rightly agreed, myself, yourself, and the other guests, that the executive secretary runs the day-to-day. However, he has limits to the exercise of these powers. Now, if the other boards that the honorable minister is chairman of their governing councils are going smoothly, because it was not an error for the framers of the law to put the minister as chairman of the governing council. If there was no need, if there was no very compelling need, I'm sure there would have been no governing council. And so as the chairman of the governing council, he must put an eye on the activities of all the parastatals. He may not have, like you rightly said, because of the number of issues that he has to contend with as the Honourable Minister of Petroleum. But that does not effectively remove him as chairman or stop him from carrying out his duties where the necessity has become very persuasive. And so the issue of that his hands are full, that he should not, I mean, it's not a proper way to look at it. What is proper is that the man has carried out his function. And if the other agencies under his supervision are going on smoothly, does he have to raise the letter when there are no issues?
And as you
In the
know,
past,
there are those...
have we heard him raise letters? He hasn't done that. He only did this because some of the workers had also complained, some had brought issues before him that you need to intervene. Assuming you are in this studio here and you hear that the local content, there's a big crisis because workers have started rioting, that they have brought people who are their far juniors that are not their seniors to superintend, and they are not going to accept it because this goes against extant labor laws or provisions. Is the minister, in his capacity as chairman of the governing council, because his hands are full, should allow the situation to escalate? I think if you look deeply at these issues, except there are some other contending objectives that we do not see, I think it's very apparent that the minister acted dutifully and should be commended. What I think that the executive secretary need to do, they are in the same, they are part of one big family. It's a very simple thing. You have asked me to reverse. If the law says so, you reverse, and then you go back to him. I have been given powers to do the daily running of this office, so please, this is what I want.
Mr. Uwakwele, I hear everything that you said, and indeed I understand it to the extent that limiting myself to what you have professed on this program. But undercutting the chief executive of any of the parastatals under you, I don't know, the very smooth governance and smooth running that seems to be the minister's concern, according to you, for him stepping in a manner that is unusual, but you have explained that the fact that it is unusual doesn't mean that the right doesn't exist. Surely that can't be working towards the progress and smooth running of the place. The executive secretary he has been undermined. That's why I started off by saying, what's the minister's interest? I think what you've just said before I started speaking would be the minister's interest, the effective and efficient and good running and smooth operation of the place. But I was suggesting that why would the executive secretary sabotage himself and his own operation by doing anything toward? But let me bring in, I think Sonny in Lokoja. Did I get that right? Sonny in Lokoja, you want to come in?
Yes, Sonny from Lokoja.
Okay, please go ahead, sir, quickly.
Yeah, please, I want to say that your guest is actually misleading us. You see, the minister, hello, are you listening?
We can hear you.
Yes. Your guest is actually misleading us. Now, the minister is equating the minister with the governing council. The minister is not the governing council. The minister is just the chairman of the governing council.
No, he is.
So he is the chairman of the government. He cannot single-handedly right to overturn what the executive secretary has done. The executive secretary is the secretary of the council. Is he saying that the decision that the minister has conveyed is the decision of the board? That is not the decision of the board.
Okay, but I do believe that the minister, by virtue of his position, is the chairman of the governing
that
council.
Institution rests on the executive secretary and not the minister. What the minister has done is simply, overusing his power.
Okay.
The power, he's even using the power that he doesn't have.
There are those who feel what you have just said, but as to the fact of whether or not he is the chairman of the governing council, would you like to speak on that, Mr. Lokpobiri?
I think that the contributor is actually very wrong. If the minister takes a preemptive, I'm coming now. If the minister takes a preemptive step to save the sanctity and to ensure that there's peace in that office, he acted in his position as chairman of governing council. And I'd like to say, how does the governing council express its powers? In every organization, there must be an head. If the local content takes a decision in terms of daily running of the office, who gives the directives? Is it not the executive secretary? Even if there are sectional heads that may have formulated this decision and bring to his attention, when it's sent out, who does the signing? And so to say that the minister is overstepping his bounds, I don't think is correct. I have read very copiously for you from the laws, so that you can be clearly guided that these are not decisions is taken outside is a purview of power as enshrined on the governing council. The chairman of the governing council expresses the position of the governing council. And I'm sure in the days to come, there must be a meeting and the governing council will take a decision. Nobody is disputing, again I say, nobody is disputing the fact that the executive secretary is the head of the local content and has the powers to do the daily running. However, just like the president of this country, whatever decisions and actions you are taking for the smooth implementation of decisions must be guided by certain extant laws. And where they are foul, in the same way the National Assembly can actually say, Mr. President, I think in this one you are going to beat against the law, is what exactly the governing council is there for. And so there's no need to say that the man does not have the power or is overstepping his bounds. I have read from the law. If there is a counter law, he should provide the law. Simple.
Okay, so I hear you, sir.
So before you respond, have you also seen the letter that was written by the Pengansen, like I mentioned earlier, to the effect that they wanted to shut down operations? Is anybody talking about that reality until the Pengansen National had to intervene? If there were no contending issues that could lead to breakdown or create an unnecessary uproar, would the local Pengansen chapter also take a resolution in Congress?
You know, you said we need to be. You said when this question was first of all aired and debated on our station, on a different program, you had felt a sense of injury. You had even gone as far as saying, perish the thought for TVC, but that unethical. We go out of our way not to do anything unethical. So what exactly was
I wasn't referring to you. I wasn't referring to you. I have watched the program. I was referring to the guests that appeared on the program. Okay. Let me quote exactly what they said. One said, the actions of the Honourable Minister of Petroleum is executive recklessness. In your program, you may wish to go back and check the video and fact check me if I said wrong. Another went as far as saying that the minister, opinion of the guest, and that's what I referred to. I did not refer to your own responsible act in allowing the public to debate and see what is right or wrong. No.
Okay. But in relation to the last gentleman who called in, but the chairman is, the minister is the chairman of the council, isn't he? Because that gentleman was saying that...
Yes, he's the chairman. He's the chairman. It's here in the law. You may wish to also get the law, so you can see if what I'm reading for you is wrong. He is the chairman of the governing council.
Might not have been aware of that.
Explicitly stated.
But he was...
Most probably.
Yes. But he was speaking more about because we're in a democratic era, and there are those who felt that, well, you said the word recklessly was used by a viewer, by a contributor to the program. They were using those kind of words, and it's probably because maybe they tend to look at everything from a democratic point of view, and I don't know if somehow the semblance of the opposite of that, where the minister can just wade in and say, no, it's not going to be like that. You've explained it, but people are still aghast and shocked. You are aware, sir, are you not, that there are those who have, called on the president to step in and rein in, and you don't rein in somebody who is not using power in a concerning way. The president has been asked to rein in the Honorable Minister of State. So it goes to show you that there is a lot of concern over the action that the minister has taken, even as you have tried to explain the reasoning behind it. So you are aware that it doesn't go down very well in the public space.
I think that you have just rightly said this is democracy. There is a platitude of opinions when actions like this are taken. But I did also mention at the very beginning of this program that perhaps because in time past, issues like this have not come or have not been in the national space, this may be the reason why people react to ask questions. For example, you just heard a caller who mentioned clearly that the minister is not even chairman of the governing council. So most people are not even aware of the specific positions of the law as couched in the act that is local content office. And so they could express these opinions because to most of them who are not knowledgeable of the operations as well as the law guiding the operations of that office could actually think that, what is the minister doing? We have the executive secretary who is the chief executive officer that does the day-to-day running of the board. Is it not going wrong?
All right.
These are normal expressions. But when you are fixed with the facts, we are fixed with the extant law, you will be persuaded to change because I'm not reading from the blues. I'm sure you over the last few days, you would have also done the research to see some of these laws. And I'm quoting directly from the law. And it's the law that guides these operations. And so we cannot act outside the operations. It was a cautious attempt to ensure that there was no issue.
So, Mr. Owepele, Mr. Jeremiah Owepele, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for making yourself available. You felt a sense of grievance, maybe on behalf of the minister, but we've given you, the opportunity, as it were, to respond to it, and you have done so. Thank you very much for coming along and shedding more light on it.